The New York Post, Andrew Marchand reported that Pat McAfee pays millions to Aaron Rodgers for guesting on his show, and McAfee took offense to the report. Though McAfee personally messaged Marchand and partially confirmed his report by saying that he's paid Aaron Rodgers over $1 million for sure, McAfee still called the sports media columnist a rat. A rat. Marchand also reported that McAfee also pays nearly $1 million per year to University of Alabama football coach Nick Saban for interviews, but claims that McAfee isn't the only one in the media who is paying people for interviews. Listen, McAfee, who signed a 5-year deal with ESPN, reportedly worth around $85 million, certainly seems to have gotten his money's worth. Aaron Rodgers Tuesdays have become an appointment viewing for NFL fans, and Rodgers' presence unquestionably helped raise the profile of the show. Every week, his comments are aggregated and shared across social media. McAfee told Marchand that Rodgers deserves much more than what he's gotten for the time and effort he's put into Aaron Rodgers Tuesdays. This is, of course, according to Joseph Zucker at Bleacher Report. I want to stop and listen, man. This idea that journalism are paying people on the topic that they're covering and then still want to be taken serious. First of all, it's hard to take them serious. It's hard to take them serious for a lot of reasons. But this idea that you're paying them this much money, you're not just jeopardizing your reputation. You have the whole network of ESPN looking silly when they let go so many quality journalists to bring your show on, and then we found out they gave you $85 million plus you an extra budget to pay Aaron Rodgers. I would much rather listen to Jalen Rose and Aaron Rodgers anytime about any sport.
It's interesting because obviously this is my industry. This is what I do for a living. And, for people at home to understand, like in hardcore sports journalism, it is absolutely considered to be unethical to pay your interview subjects. That's not something you do, right? It damages your credibility. It's obviously a conflict of interest. If somebody is getting financial gain from speaking to you, the information that you're getting from them can obviously, your relationship with the person is obviously now being called into question. Your objectivity, your ability to cover this person in the future is now compromised. Like, everybody knows that. I think the problem is that in sports in particular, as media and journalism, it's so, verging on entertainment, so much of sports media, that those lines get blurred. Even Pat McAfee himself, a former football player, he's going to say, I'm not a journalist. I'm out here entertaining. Aaron Rodgers is my friend. His presence on my show enriched me, and I think he deserves to get paid for it. That's the way he sort of spun this. I think the problem is mostly for outlets like the outlet like ESPN, who has now brought McAfee in, that people can, I think, quite justifiably question the integrity of the Pat McAfee Show and the information that they're getting when the two guys are so chummy and buddy. I would say, the onus kind of is on the fans. Like, if you really want to watch athletes talk to their buddies and be completely and wholly uninteresting and not give you any pertinent information, I guess that's on you. I'm with you, Mondale. I would much prefer, honestly, the work of actual real sports journalists to just, athlete, buddy, chummy stuff. I think real journalists have a better sense of what makes athletes interesting than their own buddies do. But, that's just me and my personal preference.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just your personal preference. It is actually standard. It should be industry standard. And this shouldn't be a small story. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think Marchand's report is likely to bring more scrutiny upon McAfee, given what's perceived as preferential treatment towards Roger and an unwillingness to push back against the more controversial remarks made by legendary quarterback. That's, of course, the Bleacher Report as well. In one recent example, Rodgers challenged Kansas City Chiefs star tight end Travis Kelce, who he dubbed as Mr. Pfizer, to a debate on the efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccine. It wasn't the first time critics pointed out what they believe was McAfee's allowing Rodgers to spread vaccine misinformation. I don't even know why we have to put this word in here. Viewers didn't believe that. Aaron Rodgers, in the height of COVID, had some ridiculous ideas, some ridiculous views. He's not a doctor. He's not a doctor, right? So this idea that we got to say that these are skeptical beliefs, this guy is ridiculous. He was a anti-COVID vaccine. He had crazy ideas about what you could do to not get COVID. He spoke on things that he shouldn't have been speaking on, and his policies and this information going unchecked can lead to people dying, i.e. Donald Trump telling people to drink bleach and people not to take the vaccine. So this idea that you're calling Kelce Mr. Pfizer is a play on what science is. And I think unchecking this is the very reason this is unethical, to be paying your friends to come on your show and they're pretending like you're not paying them. And when I say pretending, if ESPN is paying someone $1 million to do one segment a week, then you would normally see a background set up. But the way they carry the Aaron Rodgers interview is like he's at home lounging, just being interviewed on his own will. No, we should have known it up front that you were getting millions. We should have known up front that there was going to be no pushback when you say ridiculous ideas like the vaccine didn't work. Wise, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I mean, the lack of pushback is always concerning. Again, the proliferation of athlete-led media has spread a lot over the years, right? And I think some of my colleagues might look at them as competition. I honestly see it as just more content that we can cover as media. Yeah, but I think this is sort of the trade-off of that. If you're a fan, like, you're just gonna get some of this chummy stuff. And to address Aaron Rodgers specifically in his quote unquote vaccine skepticism, where I'm not gonna lie, I kind of chuckled at the Mr. Pfizer thing because Travis Kelce is literally doing commercials for Pfizer. Like, he literally is in Pfizer commercials. So there is something a little bit funny about that. But what I would say to Aaron Rodgers and people like him is that, one, we can say two things to be true. That some of the COVID protocols across the country, varying from different states, might have been wrong-headed, inconsistent, and didn't make sense in a lot of ways that they ended up being implemented, right? For example, the rate of COVID deaths was no different from red state to blue state until the vaccine came. And because red states got vaccinated at way lower rates, the death rate spiked for them. Whereas in blue states, people who were less reticent to use the vaccine, people started dying at a lesser rate. Like, this is just a fact. This is true. So it can be true that some people might say, oh, the way we implemented COVID protocols, maybe I think we kind of overreached or overstepped in certain places. Some people might disagree. I'm fine with somebody saying that. But the empirical evidence is that the vaccines freaking worked. And Aaron Rodgers and his ilk not being able to admit that nobody grew a third head or 11th finger from taking the vaccine. Tens and millions of us did it. We're all fine. It's great. And the fact that they can't come back and just say, you know what, we might have been a little bit wrong-headed on our end with our vaccine skepticism is why, to me, people like Aaron Rodgers have no credibility on the subject.
Yeah, no credibility. And then on top of that, not having credibility, we also got to acknowledge that you got people in his industry that help bolster the BS between him and McAfee. When you see Stephen A. Smith, who told McAfee during a segment on air, quote, I want you to tell the public out there who's been critical and questioning of your relationship to kiss your ass. They wish they had the relationship. All of these people tell them to kiss your ass twice. That's right. That's a quote. Stephen A. It's ridiculous. So when you have the second highest or the first highest paid people talking about the vaccine and also the nature of that relationship as if it's normal, you start questioning the entire dynasty that is Disney, because Disney owns ESPN. And I mean, but we did see some pushback. However, it didn't come from inside the ESPN network. And I think the mass laying off of ESPN staff got people inside afraid to criticize the network. But Keith Olbermann, being Keith Olbermann, went ahead and did what he always does. And he said, this isn't difficult and it isn't nuanced. You can't pay some active athlete and not pay others and still claim to be doing journalism. Go figure. He added ESPN has to terminate his relationship with Pat McAfee and do it immediately. The entirety of his 44 years of credibility is at stake. I mean, I think, this isn't the first time its credibility has been at stake. And I definitely don't think they're going to let go of their new golden child, because he's drawn upon what they thought they were going to lose because of their fight with DeSantis, which is, frustrated white men for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, where I would disagree with Keith in that is, maybe the credibility with who? Certainly not their customers. I don't think that the average Mondale sports fan really gives a damn about journalistic credibility. I think, poll after poll has shown that the public just generally has soured on journalism as an institution, just generally speaking. So the idea that ESPN's customer base would actually care about this, I tend to disagree with Oberman there. I myself, I don't find this to be offensive. I find football and football commentary to be kind of a bit laughable in most parts, especially when athletes are talking to athletes. But yeah, I don't know that ESPN is generally going to be like, oh my God, we're seen as this paragon of sports journalism credibility that they're going to, really care too much. Again, this is ESPN. This is not, the New York Times or the New Yorker or something like that. Some journalistic entity that's reporting on, say, the Israel and Palestinian conflict, right? Where life or death is on the line for these guys. These are people generally talking about dudes in tights throwing a ball around.
Yeah, I think the important part to point out, and I think my little pushback on what you're saying, brother, is simply that journalism of sports, coverage of sports, should be the New York Times of sport. ESPN should see itself, and it shouldn't be concerned not only with its viewers or the masses, but also with the ethic, the code of ethic associated with journalism. I think you're spot on. They're not going to be, because it's not going to cost them $1. And right now, the world is more concerned with dollars than they are anything else. When we call athletes ambassadors of countries at the Olympics, then I think we should hold the people who are covering them to a higher standard.